We've been working with Kim Tahiwi, and this afternoon we're talking to Denise Hauhata, the Wānanga. So the more of these conversations that we can keep having, it will just build those list of options further. So if anyone has any questions, otherwise I'll flick back to Daryl.
Excellent. So, sorry, for us right now, the one gap, I guess, in terms of people we have really spoken to is iwi, and we're working with Kahu to find time. And I know that there's many pressures on time for all of you, because it just tends to be how things have been happening in recent years. So it's kind of the one voice we haven't brought into this conversation yet, and we have a bit of a view from the work with the Pukinga, because they've been doing quite extensive, I guess, working around the country, engaging with a lot of different iwi and hapu, and understanding truly what their needs are, and trying to change what they think vocational education means like this, but it doesn't mean it necessarily translates to what it means for each of you individually or as a collective. So it's the one voice we're still working through, listening to, and from there, as I was kind of alluded to before, our experts then are really working through this long list of options, working out how we're going to decide and what the preferred or what the most important things are to determine what this thing will look like, and then from there it's building up the rest of it and doing it. One thing we have known is our scope, because this is an early stage feasibility. It's not the feasibility of a specific option. So we're not looking around potential sites for this thing, for whatever the hub is. It could actually be multiple sites. It could be one big site. It could be something completely different. But what we're not doing is looking and saying this thing will be placed and built here. It's more of what are the key characteristics of what we need to look for, and then the next stage will be looking at what feasible places are there to actually do this. And that's all we've kind of put together for notes. I thought it'd be more interesting just if you wanted to talk through, I guess, what we're trying to do, any concerns, questions. Yeah.
Kia ora, thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions, comments?
I'm a visitor, but I was a bit intrigued with the comment that you made that small businesses don't have any time to train anybody. I don't buy into that argument at all. I mean, small businesses have an obligation to help train the next generation just the same as anybody else. And the thought that you can always... seems to be a pattern with modern business leaders in New Zealand. The government's got to do it all. One time they used to say they want to be independent of the government, get on, private enterprise, blah, blah. Now it seems to be, no, somebody else has to do all this. So it's a reaction to that observation, I guess. But the more substantive one of the big issues in the media today, which comes right back to this, is gangs. And when you're talking about engagement with hapu and iwi, I think you would have to be thinking, how do we stop those young men going and joining gangs, and to get a bit of a skill base, trade base, and so forth? It seems to me self-evident if we're going to deal with that issue, we have to give these young lads something better to do.
Kia ora, thank you for your comments. I had a question around the development of the options, and it's kind of tied into the second bullet point there, like how I'm just reading it properly, and it says they developed this, so those things haven't been developed yet, right? My question was around how kind of out of the box the thinking will be, or might be, or could be, should be, when it comes to developing that list of options, because it's quite easy to think of a hub as a building, and you alluded to it, Daryl, that it might be multiple buildings or it might be something else. And so I guess my comment is really just about thinking about maybe different ways to do this, because I know that with Te Wānanga Raukawa, for example, when all other tertiary institutions' enrolments were going down, theirs was going up. quite a lot, and it's because they quite heavily switch their focus into kind of delivering courses online. And so I was just thinking about the idea of a hub, whether or not that even has to be a physical place.
No, I agree 100%. I think when we look at the shift in training, and similar to your conversation before, Boulder, it's exactly the same thing. It's actually the way they fund bits. It's moving away from these physical sites, and the way Te Pūkenga is looking is they're trying to move away from campus-based learning and actually, if you have 20 Archon saying sitting somewhere, I mean, why would you shift 20 people to go to a certain place to learn when you can either shift one or deliver online or do something different? So that's kind of where the logic and things are going. And I hear completely. I think the future will be very different. I think if you think about work-based learning, they've had recent shifts in funding which have prioritized work-based learning over everything else. But you have to build all the wraparound support and learning around it. So that's really what it looks like. And I don't think I don't think the options will come down to it here is that it looks like something that everyone's seen before, because I just don't believe that's where Te Pūkenga is going. Unfortunately, they're also going through change over this year, and probably the next 3, 5 to 10 years in how they deliver as well. So whatever we needs to think about that, because if it's something big in a single site, it's a lot of investment, and it has to be able to preempt and see where the future goes. So that's quite an important one to sit there. But no, I think it won't be just standard. Here's a building, let's go do it, and the students will come. I don't think that's what it'll look like. But we do have to work with all the people doing the provision of stuff, because actually, if they're not willing to turn up and teach and engage in whatever way it is, then it's again we have to make sure we do that. So we have been talking to the providers. We had them all in a room saying, what are the bits you need and what would you teach, and how, what kind of courses would work in this kind of function or this kind of structure and ways of doing things. So we've kind of got a starter for 10, but we haven't nailed those yet. They're not kind of all set in stone.
Kia ora, thank you. Any other
I
comments?
can promise you they're very different though.
He mei nui tēnei ki a koe, Darryl, ko Andrea. So appreciate your input into the kaupapa. I know we met a little while ago, and a lot of it was about getting you guys in front of the Whakaminenga and explaining, and I think you've done that. And there are some issues in terms of connectedness between Paraparaumu and Otaki, which hopefully with the advent of transmission gully and all that starts to develop might make it a little bit easier, but those are also things that we needed to consider. And so I suppose having more of a virtual or a combination of both of a physical site sort of helps sort of mitigate some of that. But being from the old school sort of university, I still like our face-to-face. As an old lecturer and kaiako, I think there's still space for all that. But absolutely, due to COVID and things, that the online platforms seem to be getting a bit more successful in terms of engagement. So all the best with the kaupapa, and appreciate your and the spirit in which you guys have engaged with mana whenua. And I'm so glad that we have input from our iwi university in Otaki. Those people up there will have a lot to offer the kaupapa in terms of they've been leading that for us as the Confederated Tribes here for a long time there now. So we just got to get Naomi, our vocational team, which I think they've been put into the email stream with Bianca and that. But other than that, I think you've got a pretty much you've got two representation there from two of the iwi. So I am conscious I'm sitting in front of Matua Jim, and he's having issues with getting iwi representation. So it's an issue that's it's part of dealing with iwi. So thank you very much. That's all I wanted to say about that, and good luck.
Thank you.
Young people from getting into gangs, is that what? I think a lot of our kids, I suppose, their potential is locked up in prisons and that, and I think that So what we have to find out, I suppose, is how do we unlock their potential, and then, yeah, and which we call the pitamata. But I think it's by, I suppose, taking them back to their reo and all those sort of things. Jim, like some of them don't even know who their mother or father is, or grandfather, and I think that's a place where we can go to bring them out of that. Because when we left Gisborne, there was 14 of us came down from there, and we were lucky at that time, in '63, that but we could have been dragged into gangs too. But what saved us was because we knew our whakapapa. We knew that what respect was, and all that. So so the 14 of us were lucky. We're fortunate not to end up in gangs at that time, because I know the Black Power was starting at that time, and I was asked to go to one of the meetings, and I got a shock to, here I am amongst these people, and they were saying, when I said, well, no, I'm in the wrong place, they were actually wild about it, you know. They said, well, F off then, you know. And so, but it was only because that's the way we were brought up back. And I think that's one way if we can get back to it. We talked about the wānanga raukawa, if we get more into those kids in that area, yeah, and to, because they got potential, you know, their potential is there. We talk about it in Māori, we say we come from the kore, which is the nothingness, to the pō, to the nights, and from that to the whaiao to the, well, we say to the araputo, the tangata whakaaro, ki te ao marama, which is, we go through that system, but I think is at the transitional part of the whaiao, where we have the problem, and they're not falling out into that pathway of coming out into the world of light. And that, so maybe we can, I don't know, it's only a thought that
I just think that if we're talking about an educational hub, etc., and so forth, and we're talking about the community and the young people, and one of the issues out there is gangs. I mean, it's every day in the newspaper. I mean, where does the work that you're planning here, and this is outside my remit for this meeting, but never mind, that never stopped me before, the remit must include, how do you reach the community that is under most stress and therefore end up in gangs? I mean, that's really... I grew up with Maori neighbours. I went to school with them. I mean, I've been with them all right. And they didn't end up in gangs at that stage. I mean, so what are we not doing right at the present time? And I know all about universities. I was 12 years Chancellor of Waikato, and which has the highest Maori population of students of any university in New Zealand. And so I think we won't solve these problems unless we concentrate on them and talk about them. You've got to talk about them. You've got to have them up front. Say, well, okay, what are we going to do tomorrow? What are we going to do next week, next month? Otherwise, you just build more jails. You've got two choices. You know. Engage them in the community or build more jails.
Kia ora matua. Thank you for your comments on that. I think it goes to kind of some of the problem statements that, you know, when we're looking at things like the Education Training Hub or any of our other issues. Actually, what are some of the other issues that this project can look to solve, rather than just, you know, the education part of it? There's all of the broader social issues as well.
So is there someone specific that you think would be good to talk to about this? Because I'm happy to talk to them if they've got any ideas.
I know lots of people will have an opinion on this, whether or not it's someone to talk to. But I think that's probably a conversation we can have offline with.
Thank you.
You guys. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So thank you for your kōrero. Yeah. I think Kahu Wolf is going to follow up through the conversation that needs to be had with Ngāti Tō, and Kirst has a comment. Do you have a comment?
Oh,
Yeah.
kia ora. Comment about someone you can talk to about that. When you're talking with Denise, you could include the discussion about some of the potential for this initiative to help with the issues around gangs. We're having other discussions also about justice systems, Māori responses to be helping more with that. So she can put you in touch with some people who might be able to
Awesome.
help with that, and she will have some views, of course. And she's representing Ngā Hapu Ōtaki today, but also works at Te Wānanga Raukawa, so always has that view in mind. And I think she might be bringing someone else from Te Wānanga Raukawa to that discussion.
Fantastic.
And just a comment about the gang issue is, yes, it's massive and it's current and it's increasing, but you know, I think we all know that it's a problem that's arisen from a number of things. And you know, there's the poverty, there's the housing, there's racism, there's education, there's a whole range of things that are in play, we know, and the solutions therefore then can be quite difficult. But thank you for that, bringing that up. It is something, I agree, it's good to talk about it. You know, ignoring things doesn't make them go away. So thank you for bringing it up.
You know. Yeah. But if we...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. So, on that note, we'll move to our next agenda item, affordable housing entity. Kia ora. I don't know where you aim it. Is it up there? Yes. Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh. Well, kia ora, Laura. Time is yours.
Kia ora. Kia ora. For those who I haven't met, my name is Laura Bertelson and I am in the Strategic Projects team with Darren Grant, who is unable to make it today, and Angela Bell is also unable to make it today as she is stuck with some trees blocking roads and things. So just me today. So we're going to talk a little bit about the consultation on the affordable housing entity. So give a bit of background, an overview of where we've got to, the direction that's being received from council, a little bit of information around the consultation document, next steps, and then a chance for some questions at the end. Is everyone okay hearing me with masks on and things? Cool. So a bit of the background, through the long-term plan that was recently completed, council made the decision to take a bigger role in housing, and one of the 5 community outcomes is our people have access to quality housing in Kāpiti so that they can live and thrive. The Kāpiti Coast Housing Needs Assessment was recently completed, which provided some confronting information, I guess, that we sort of knew, but it's good to have a clear idea around the housing needs, and the housing stress in our district is extensive, and it's having that domino effect on a range of wellbeing outcomes as well. Quite a big stat that came through there was that over 88% of renters are unable to affordably purchase a dwelling at that lower quartile house price of 600 or 670k. Another document which has recently been approved by Council is the Kapiti Coast District Council Housing Strategy. So one of those key objectives in the housing strategy is that there is a range of healthy and affordable housing for Kapiti residents, with a key action to explore how alternative tenure and ownership models could be incentivised or delivered in partnership with others, for example, build to rent, community land trust or leaseholder arrangements, which is where this piece of work comes in. And so those two documents were approved by Council in May, so it's all fairly recent. Moving along. So during this process, we undertook, desktop research and interviewed various organisations across New Zealand to understand what was happening in different areas, what's been successful, what do we need to be aware of, and these kind of options came out that were considered. So the first being a council-controlled organisation via a holding company, second being a community housing or community land trust, the third being supporting existing providers, so council is in a supporting role. And then the fourth is kind of, a hybrid of those other two there, which is an independent community land trust that can partner with iwi and other providers. And the engagement so far, conversations were held directly throughout the process with our iwi partners, so Ngā Hapu, Ngāti Toa and Te Atiawa. Through those conversations, we understand that iwi are very interested in opportunities for provision of increased social and affordable housing and how they can partner or deliver with council and the proposed new entity. Iwi are quite advanced in their thinking about the delivery of social and affordable housing, and we also discussed Whakaminenga and Whenua Tōpu Trust in one of our discussions. When kind of analysing those four options, Council provided support for the following objectives for an affordable housing entity to help us understand what we needed to do to inform what the preferred model would be for delivery. So a key one, that it can be established and or operated in partnership with iwi and other partners, that it's able to qualify for government funding and support. This in particular relates to the income-related rent subsidy, which the government provides subsidy for social housing, which councils are unable to access. You might be familiar with lots of the media around Wellington City Council and their issues around that at the moment. That it is able to operate with a degree of independence and can access the necessary specialist skills and experience. It can provide affordable rentals and affordable housing ownership options, so a range of alternative tenure options to the local community. That it can operate with financial sustainability over the long term, and that any returns are to be reinvested into affordable housing. From those objectives, the preferred option was landed on, which is the independent community land trust. It can own land, which can be transferred to it by council or acquired on its own for the purpose of delivering affordable or social housing. It would be governed by a board of trustees that could be made up of iwi, community residents and professional representatives. The community land trust can use this land to create affordable housing solutions in partnership with iwi, community housing providers and other organisations that could then develop houses on the land. This ability to partner with existing providers also enables quicker delivery rather than starting new from the get-go. Some of the advantages of the proposal, the trust will be able to access a wider range of funding sources, such as the IRRS that I mentioned, that they're able to partner with existing community housing providers. For example, Ngāti Toa has a community housing provider set up, Dwell operate in Wellington also, where those wraparound services are already existing. The trust would be able to partner with iwi and other organisations to deliver those housing solutions, and that it would be structured to enable a wide range of housing tenure models, so both the affordable renting and affordable home ownership options. The consultation opened with the community on the 7th of June, and it's open until the 8th of July. Some of the channels that we've been using and will be using, media advisory through Everything Kāpiti, social media posts, radio ads, newspaper ads, digital advertising, emails to those signed up to our Have You Say database, and also those that engaged in the housing needs assessment work which has recently been completed, and then emails to key partners and stakeholders. You possibly would have already received an email from the Mayor last week with regards to this. The next steps are, I guess, the consultation process, but I did want to highlight that there's, I guess, going to be a bit of a gap between the consultation closing and when the hearings and decision and next steps happen, which is going to be in the new triennium. Council provided feedback that they recognise that this is a key issue and something that they wanted to progress forward so that it was still delivered as soon as possible, but obviously we're having to just put on a bit of a hold over that election period, and then the new council will be able to make a decision moving forward there. Lots of information, so I'm happy to take any questions and yeah, go from there.
Kia ora, thank you. Any comments, questions? Chris?
Again, I'm a visitor, but why are we not looking at pre-built homes in New Zealand? 80% of houses in Scandinavia are pre-built. We still persist with just building each individual home slowly and expensively. Why the hell don't we change?
So through the chair, I guess part of this is that we would be working with other providers to ensure that we are able to build homes quickly and also in an affordable way. So understanding those people that are best practice.
But in the present model, they're not affordable. No use throwing words at it. We have to change if we're going to meet the goal of affordable housing.
So through the chair, the Community Land Trust model is set up so that the Community Land Trust itself takes ownership of the land and removes the cost of land from the purchase, so that people essentially own the dwelling itself or the improvement on the land for the ownership models. And so this reduces the land cost and the total cost and works towards making it a more affordable purchase for those who are wanting to purchase a home.
Yeah. Kia ora. Thanks. Kirst, do you have a comment, question?
I just wanted to thank Laura for coming and sharing that information. We've been, and for everyone else, we've been very involved in the discussions, and it is at the early stages, and it's focused on the sort of vehicle that will be able to do these things and getting it as affordable as possible is in the next phase of discussions and work. So we're looking forward to that. Kia ora.
There's a man here, Bill Littlewood. He's coming from England. He's selling pre-built homes, and they were cheap because we divided our land back home for whānau homes, and they were buying those homes from Matata that were flooded, and they were selling them. These people up in Lake Iwi up there were buying them and then selling them to our kids that had been damaged in flooding and putting it on the property. And I said to him, well, I've got this person who's in our league club. He sells affordable homes, like a one-bedroom one was $50,000, and it's because it was livable with the toilet. And I tried to explain that to our whānau, but they already had booked these homes to be brought onto the property, and now they get them on too. We got on the property now, and they've been damaged. And so these affordable homes that he had would have been more cheaper for them. Yeah, I mean. When you look at them, they're like a shipping container, but they're not. They're all you know, they're all prepared and everything with insulation and, you know, and it goes up from 2-bedroom, I think was 75,000, something like that. But they look like a container and people don't like them because that's what they look like. But they were affordable. Yeah, so, but now they've got a big bill for a house that has been flooded out and there's a lot of damage and yeah. So I agree with you. His name is Darryl Littlewood. This is him now, I think.
Kia ora.
Yeah.
Kia ora, koro
Yeah.
Councillor.
Oh, I just wanted to comment actually. Mr. Bulge, your comments very, very, very relevant. Very, very relevant. And I dare say what Council's looking at doing is finding a vehicle that can be most effective in providing solutions, if you like. So I'm quite looking forward to the CLT. We've had a great presentation from Queenstown districts with regards to how it works. But it's just putting a system in place that allows us to do exactly what you're talking about and partner with iwi with regards to potential providers, but other providers as well, and that sort of thing. And the sooner we can get that up and running, I think the better. That would be fantastic. One question I did have, it refers to the preferred option. It talks to the CLT governed by a board of trustees made up of iwi, community residents and professional representatives. I brought this up at the presentation that we had ourselves directly, and I just want to phrase this delicately. It's no disrespect to iwi at all, but we've just been talking to regards to requirement of capacity, if you like. And something I just want to put out there is that there seems to be a prerequisite for iwi representation to go into all these committees, and I do wonder whether some of these committees, if you like, or some of these things would be better off having that partnership arrangement with iwi with regards to providing. That might be more beneficial as a relationship. I just wanted to put that out there for just thought than anything else, because I know capacity is an issue, and it's that weighing up is there an advantage to iwi being on said committee, or is the advantage more in partnering in the provision of and feeding in to the committee as such. So I just wanted to put that view out there, that's all. But no, fantastic piece of work, looking forward to a result.
Kia ora, thank you. Any other comments? I'll wrap it up. Yeah, I suppose just a couple of things from me. I think the points you raised, Councillor, about iwi participation representation are relevant, particularly where iwi are moving into the space on their own accord as well. So part of that probably declare a conflict of interest for myself in that I do sit on the Te Ahuru Mowai board, which is the Ngāti Toa community housing provider, and we're also in the process of developing our own community land trusts, which seems to me Mr. Leon Grandy has had his input here in providing his advice from our Maori services. He likes to Queenstown Lake people are his friends. Yeah, but I think it's my question though was actually about council moving into the space of developing an affordable housing entity. Is the council currently have property that it manages and it's looking to transfer it to a community land trust model, or is that us setting something up and then having to? Okay.
So council has recently purchased that piece of land at Rangiuru Road, 254 Rangiuru Road, last year, I believe, 2021. And so that was purchased for the purpose of affordable housing. And that has been, I guess, considered alongside the community land trust model. We are having conversations with Ngā Hapu Otaki about this, in making sure that the process of the community land trust doesn't necessarily hold up the development of housing at Rangiuru Road, but that is, for an example, a piece of land that could be transferred into the community land trust. And my understanding is that council has further budget for acquisition of land for the purpose of housing.
Cool, thank you. Yep, definitely. Given that there is the land at Rangiuru Road, Yeah, definitely a strong relationship there with Ngā Hapu. Wow. Just. Once upon a time it might not have been.
Oh, kia ora, Naomi, Laura. There is, I don't know if that fully sort of answered the question. Naomi asked about housing that council has, or homes that council has for housing. I think, can you talk about housing for people that council already owns?
Sure. So through the chair, the council has an older person's housing portfolio. This is not included in the scope of this work for consideration of that particular housing blocks to be transferred into the Community Land Trust at this point. Within the housing strategy, there is a separate action to review the council older person's housing. So that will be done separately and would be, I guess, discussions will be had separately about that particular block of land and housing.
Oh yeah, no, okay. I was just, you said a number of times in your presentation about access to the IRRS, but you can't access the IRRS unless you've got property. And it makes sense in my mind if you had older people's housing within a model like this, if that was the only mechanism to, you know, access IRRS, because then they only have to pay 25% of their rent.
Yes.
Kia ora. Councillor.
Just wanted to comment on that as well, through you, Madam Chair, that when Council was discussing all this, occlusionary zoning was a term that was utilised. Perhaps Meguru, you could confirm, is there a wider remit with regards to local government council around that inclusionary zoning from a more New Zealand-wide perspective as such?
I think you're talking about the Regional Leadership Committee, which consists of all the mayors, the chief executives, and 2 cabinet ministers sitting there. There is a tranche of work being carried out on housing regionally, and part of that involves the possibility of inclusionary zoning.
And I think that revolves around proportional, you know, any large scale development, you know, would be a proportional amount of land or like capital, should we say, being transferred into that trust.
We know that elsewhere in Christchurch and also the Queenstown one, councils have ended up in court because developers have challenged that. So it's better to have a regional approach so that any sort of cost can be spread out.
Thank you. Kirst?
Oh, kia ora. Yeah, just kind of in response to your comment question, Martin. I'm not sure who the question was directed at, about the, you know, the way in which iwi are involved with this. But yeah, so if you could clarify, is that a question to Te Whakaminenga or Kāpiti? Or are you directing that question to iwi? Or, because I'm not.
Just responding to that through Madam Chair. Look, it was just a general comment, to be honest. It was more around, to give you a little bit of background, at the meeting we had around this, Council had around this, there was an interpretation of a CLT. Council's interpretation includes iwi as a prerequisite. My what I'd seen up, the interpretation of a CLT was very generic. It didn't specifically include iwi as such. And my concern is again, it's around iwi capability, or no, that's the incorrect word, capacity, with regards to, and as a general comment, was around iwi capacity to be involved in all these groups as a prerequisite, as such, rather than as a choice, as to what's best for iwi. Whether being on that is just, you know, it seems to be a default, is iwi, there's an iwi position on a committee, but is there any consideration whether iwi actually want to be on that committee? as such, rather than it just being a default position. From an iwi perspective, maybe it's not advantageous to be on that committee. It's maybe more advantageous to be partnering with that committee in the provision of that particular committee. That's all, and it was just bringing it in as a general thought, just bringing it in for general discussion and just general consideration, but no specific response as such.
Yeah, a few things sort of going on there, and I'm wondering where this whole line of inquiry about iwi capacity is leading. I don't think you should take the responses about the Takutai Kāpiti and capacity as a blanket capacity of iwi to participate in the range of things that we're involved in. And yeah, appreciate you have a view about how we might be participating in the affordable housing vehicle, and we've been quite heavily involved, and we are looking at the different ways in which we're engaging. And yeah, we're building our capacity a lot at the moment, and are fully involved in some things and are looking for people to be involved in other things. But I think we're doing pretty well at the moment, and we've got a lot more people coming in at the moment, and I don't think you need to worry about it, actually. I think that we will let you know where there's areas that if there's a space for us and we're not able to engage in it, we will let you know. We will let KCDC know and Te Whakaminenga or Kāpiti know. But thanks for your comments and the ideas. Kia ora.
Yeah, I think these saw on TV the other night up in Apuhi that they're selling. They had $75,000 home, all done out and livable, and but what they found out it's not affordable because they can't get the money, which was a cheap home, and that was one of the problems that they had. There's a lot of the Māori families that can't get to them. It's still not out of their range of being affordable, and so but yeah, they were going for 75,000. Nice homes. I think it was a one bedroom, all done out with really great, nice homes. But there's Darren Littlewood. I have his number at home, and he does it. He's moved to Christchurch now, and he's got that big. He's done them all around Auckland, and he was working here in Paraparamu, but found that Christchurch was more profitable for him, so he's moved on there. But he's still available to, like my nephew, to get that house that he got from Matata was costing him $450,000, and that wasn't without the infrastructure. I argued with them about the infrastructure. When they first said they'll put these houses down, they told me that the infrastructure was free. They was getting power to them, the water, the sewage. And when we had a meeting last year, just beginning for those houses moved in, I asked again, and they said, no, it's the infrastructure's added to the house. So it's going to cost them more than what I was saying to them. Please tell my nephews and nieces what it will cost them. But that wasn't coming through. And so now the houses are just sitting on land, wet land, and it's really terrible what they've, so, but with Darryl Littlewood, they sorted all that out. So that's only an advice for affordable homes. My wife and I are thinking of doing one, putting one up back home, and it'll cost us about $58,000, I think, to get a nice one bedroom, toilets and everything in there, so I can move away from Kāpiti now.
Hang on now.
No, Nita's a really organised, but we do go back there, and it's affordable, something that we can put on their property. We were a lucky family. We're the only Māori family up there with general land. I mean, the rest of the land is all Papakainga land, so So we're lucky. And that, so, yeah, so we think of doing that right now, if I can. But yeah, that's so when he said that, is it affordable when they can't get the money? You know, and to me it's cheap, that's a cheap home. Yeah. But he called it or tēnā. Something to talk about.
Kia ora koroton. Any further comments about the housing?
Is it affordable when you have to get the council consent and you know and the infrastructure? Is it doesn't, you know, does that work out affordable when you're getting a $75,000 home and then you got the infrastructure and you got I rang the planner up in Gisborne Council. They said what would cost each family, it would cost one person about 27,000 to get all the. So you know, it starts building up. But I don't want. I'd win the lotto one day. Kia ora.
Yep. Kia ora koroton. Any other comments on affordable housing entity?
No, but Laura has all the solutions and answers.
No pressure.
Look, not a question, Madam Chair, but just responding back to Kirsten, if I can. It's just like, thank you for the comment. And I just felt it appropriate to bring, from a governance perspective, I thought this is the appropriate forum to bring up the discussion point more than anything else. But I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah. Kia ora for your comments on that, Martin. Yeah, probably just to add to the kōrero around that too, and probably just, I don't know if it's a different viewpoint or a additional, but at the end of the day, for iwi, it's up to them to determine when and how they participate, and it's a lot easier for us when our partners have created and maintain a space for us to participate when we're able to, rather than then have to have a whole nother argument, conversation, kōrero, to try and create the space and then find the people to fill it. So, kia ora. Ka pai. Next agenda item, 6.4, review of Class 4 and TAB venue gambling policies. Leslie, your time to shine. Welcome.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Leslie. I'm in the policy and research team. I don't believe I've been to this hui before. My colleague Hamish is hopefully joining us online. He's in isolation, and last time he was here and I was not in isolation, so we're tag teaming. So I'm just here to introduce a review of our gambling policies. I've only got 6 slides, so shouldn't take too long, but we're just about to review these 2 policies, so I just wanted to run through the process around that. So the wrong one. That one. So firstly, the Class 4 gambling policy. So basically, Class 4 gambling is essentially about pokie machines, and under the Gambling Act, councils are required to have a Class 4 gambling policy. The Act has 4 main objectives, and that's around controlling the growth of gambling, to prevent and minimise harm from gambling, to ensure the money from gambling benefits the community, and to ensure that there's community involvement in decisions about the provision of gambling. So we first developed this policy in 2004, and we've had a number of reviews since then. It is due by legislation to be reviewed every 3 years, so that's why we are reviewing again this year. So our current Class 4 policy, as dictated by legislation, it manages where and how many Class 4 venues can be located in the district. It includes restrictions on the maximum number of gaming machines at a venue, and includes a relocation policy. So if a venue wants to relocate elsewhere, there's rules around that as well. So that's just a brief overview of the Class 4. With the TAB venue gambling policy, this is one that's required by the Racing Industry Act 2020. So a new act has come into place since we last did a review on this one. And one of the objectives of this act is to prevent and minimise harm from gambling conducted under this act. So obviously that's the TAB betting type gambling. So a TAB venue is actually a standalone venue owned or leased by TAB NZ. And we currently don't have any of those in the district, so we do have TAB betting services available at some of the Class 4 venues, but we don't actually have any standalone venues. But regardless of that, we do still have the policy that tells us how many venues can be established in the district, and if so, where. And once again, this needs to be reviewed every 3 years, and obviously it makes sense to do them together, which is what we're doing. Just to give you a brief overview of the current situation with gambling venues and so on in the district. So at the moment, our Class 4 gambling policy has a cap of 15 venues across the district, with no new venues permitted in the Otaki ward, and a cap of 228 gaming machines with no new machines permitted in the Otaki ward. And just you'll see on the table on the right there, it tells you how many venues and how many machines are in each ward across the district. And that number down the bottom just tells you that there's 8 trusts or clubs that sit behind those venues. Those are the ones that distribute the proceeds from the machines. So at the time of the last policy review, there were 12 venues and 192 machines, and this has reduced by 1 venue and 8 machines due to the closure of a club in 2020. As I mentioned, there's currently no TAB venues in the district. And in terms of proceeds, just a quick summary there, just to give you an idea of how much is spent. This is purely just on basically pokie machines. So, for example, in 2021, a total of, after obviously winnings were dished out and so on, there was proceeds of 9,841,892, and this is up by about $500,000 from 2019. And there was a dip in 2020, obviously due to people being locked in their houses and not able to get to the poker machines, but they may have been gaming in other ways, but that's not reflected in this. So when we're looking at our reviewing these policies, obviously there's some factors in there that are big considerations, and that's around managing the risks and benefits of Class 4 gambling, the negative impacts of problem gambling in our communities, and the disproportionate presence of venues and machines in areas of higher socioeconomic deprivation. So just to run through our process with the review of these policies. So just where we are commencing now is with pre-engagement and analysis. I'll just go through that in a bit more detail on the next slide. Following that, we'll be developing draft options for consultation. So that'll be a draft policy and recommendations, and part of that is also a social impact assessment that helps inform that. And we'll be briefing both council and coming back to this this meeting to brief on that, which won't be until after the elections at this stage. And then obviously we go out for public consultation for 1 month, which will most likely be early in the new year. And based on that, obviously we have submissions, hearings, and we look to amend the policy, and then we'll brief again before looking to adopt the policy next year. So just a little bit more detail on the stage we're at now. So just sort of launching into the early engagement with key stakeholders, obviously with our AB partners, with the Problem Gambling Foundation, who is one of the very significant key stakeholders in this process, the Pokie trusts and venues, social support groups, who are the ones that can obviously help identify problem gambling issues, and the police. So yeah, just pointing to my little sort of bubbles on the right there. So that's just kind of indicating that all these 3 elements all kind of are related, and basically will feed into the social impact assessment, which is a requirement of both acts, that we undertake a social impact assessment on the impact of gambling in the district. So by engaging with our key stakeholders, which is a targeted engagement first up rather than the public, which comes later, as well as collecting data and analysing that data. So there is data available through the DAA, through the Problem Gambling Foundation, through other data providers, and just sort of gathering all that, putting it all together, forming a social impact assessment, and that will all help to inform the proposal for any changes to the policies. So that's pretty much just wanted to sort of let you know what the plan is at this stage. And yeah, as I mentioned, we will brief again following stage 1, and really just obviously wanting to find out how we best engage with our local iwi and hapu in the early stages and going forward, how you best to engage.
Kia ora.
Thank you.
Any
Questions?
Questions? Comments? Carl? I guess I can provide feedback from Ngāti Toa in that we do have somebody that you can contact to speak to about this, because we run a problem gambling contract. But I did have some. I'll give that to you separately. But I did have a question about whether the current policy provides for a sinking lid in the district.
Yeah, so it doesn't across the district, but technically it does just for Otaki, because we don't. It currently doesn't allow any new venues or machines there,
yeah.
And also technically the same for specifically Paekakariki, but it doesn't currently have a sinking lid policy for the whole district. But obviously that's something that will be analysed in the process of reviewing the policy. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and obviously there's a different, like obviously the sinking lid is where if a venue closes, then that will automatically reduce numbers and they can't, we can't open a new one. But at the moment, the cap that we've set for the Otaki ward is lower than the number of machines actually there. So there's not actually currently anything in the legislation that can force to reduce numbers. Right. Yeah, so that's a difference, I guess.
Yeah. Because my other question was around, actually it's quite interesting, I've seen this in other areas, I'm not sure what it looks like for Kāpiti, but where money used, when you use the money to pay for community grants or whatever it is, what I've seen in some other areas is that the money comes from the most deprived areas, but when it comes to dishing out the grants, that doesn't correlate. So it'd be interesting to see what that looks like for the region.
Yeah, this was an issue that was also raised when we briefed our elected members recently. So 40% of proceeds are supposed to go back into the community, and it doesn't look like that's currently happening. There's a number of factors, for that, including, I guess, apparently enough grant applications, but I think there's also, it's a bit more to it. I know Tonya, who's in our, who does our funding side of things, has been looking a bit more into that, but it is out of scope of this particular policy. So the policy is really just about setting the limits on the machines and venues, and although the obviously the Gambling Act specifies what needs to come back, it's in terms of what we can manage in the district, it is out of scope of this policy. But it is an interesting one.
It is, and it's a hard one too, because you know that if you don't provide venues and places, then people are just going to do it online, and then there's no way to even start capturing data.
Yeah, so when we can bring our next briefing, we'll certainly put in a bit more context around what's coming back into community and that impact as well. So it's definitely part of the picture, but in terms of the actual policy itself, it's not in the scope.
Sure, thank you. There's no further comments, questions. I guess we can move to our next agenda item, which is the 2021-22 Māori Economic Development Grants, allocation of funds. contract. Yeah. Māori Economic Development grants. Have we got someone speaking to that, or is that just the? Do we have to go through the paper?
So Deanna, who would normally speak to that, is unwell and unable to be here. So perhaps you could take the report as read in the agenda, and between Kahu and I, we will do our best to answer the questions as eloquently as Deanna would.
So all she said to me is that the grants have been approved for Katihiku Marae. That helps.
Different, I think that's the Marae Grants Program, which is the paper that's attached to the agenda is about the Māori Economic Development Grants. So the purpose of this paper is just to bring to the attention of Te Whakaminenga or Kāpiti the decisions that the Māori Economic Development Grants panel made in relation to the grant fund this year. It's fairly straightforward, I think, just noting that the panel this time round felt that there were insufficient applications of, I guess, the right quality or robustness to allocate the entire fund this year, so only part of the fund was allocated.
Kapai, so is there a recommendation, or do we have to
I think, as I turn the page, I'm assuming that the recommendation is for you to note. Hang on a minute. Yes, that you receive the report and that you acknowledge and thank the Māori Economic Development Grant Panel for their careful consideration of the applications and selection of the 3 successful grant applicants.
Kapai. Well, what Jenna said. Do we need to move that, please? Yep, I'll move it. Just a second. Kia ora. Thank you, Kirsten. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Does that come from the packing machine?
No, it comes from rates.
Kapai. So, all those in favour? Right. Opposed? Carried. Kia ora, thank you. I think
you were going to bring Kirsten's additional items.
Yes. This thing's so great that I don't know how to work it properly. Kapai. So we did have 2 additional items. And the first one was the kaupapa that you raised, Kirst, about the elections process and induction and how that should engage iwi, particularly around, I guess, the new council understanding the relationship with Te Whakaminenga, but also the various iwi relationship, connection. Yeah, kia ora. If you wanted anything else to add to the question, and then I think Janice will respond.
Kapai. Oh, thanks, Naomi. Yeah, it was just to start a discussion, which I think would become a separate piece of work about the timing, I guess, is one thing, of when the elections are happening and the appointments happen, and then the shape and the timing of the induction. And that's partly for any new councillors, potentially a new mayor, that we don't agree with that, actually. We hope the current mayor does change his mind and stay. But also new representatives from Ngā Hapu Ōtaki, possibly Ngā Soa and others, coming on, and making sure there is a really good induction process for everyone, and yeah, as quickly as possible, bringing everyone up to speed, because I feel like we've made so much progress and developed and strengthened relationships and partnerships in recent times, and so I would like to ensure that we continue along in that fashion as speedily as possible.
Sorry, making eyes at Kahu over the table to see if he's happy if I answer or whether he wants first crack. But really pleased to have that question, and really pleased to hear that you're starting to think about that, Kirsten, because certainly we are here in Council. And in terms of timing, polling day is the 8th of October. So quite quickly after that, things get very busy for the new council as council staff and others start to bombard them with everything they need to know about being a councillor and how things work around here. And as part of that induction program and sort of the broader first 90 to 100 days of being in council, there is usually a focus on mana whenua as part of that program. But I think we all recognise that, undercooked is probably a good word to describe it, and for the reasons that you've highlighted, that there has been such a significant shift in the way at both a governance and an operational level we are trying to work with our iwi partners. This next triennium's induction program needs to include far more of a focus on mana whenua. So I know Sarah Watty, our Governance and Legal Services Manager, is meant to be sitting down with Kahu this week to talk about how we can go out to iwi and have a kōrero with you around what involvement you would like to have in the program and what shape that could take, but also to have a conversation around what the likely induction kind of needs and expectations of mana whenua representatives to council and its committees would be as well, so that we can make sure that they're well catered for within the program. Certainly you will have heard the Mayor reflect that in the past, he has attempted very early in the triennium to get the councillors to Raikawa Marae, and that was difficult and unsuccessful. I think we're in a very different space now, and hopefully we will see a council that embraces the importance and significance of meeting with iwi and hapu across the district very early in their time as councillors. So yeah, look forward to more conversations about how that could roll, and those will be conversations that Kahu and Sarah will want to have as soon as you're able to.
Kia ora. I just had a thought too, that at some point during those conversations, the other part that's probably useful for iwi to be engaged in early on, that's something we do every triennium, is that inauguration ceremony for the new council.
Yeah, Steffi's poking her head up.
Yeah.
That's Steffi's baby. And yes, please, we would love early conversations about that.
Yeah, because they all happen at the same time.
Yeah.
That's my concern. Ka pai. Are there any other comments on that kaupapa? Oh, ka pai. And then the next item I had on my agenda was just to raise, and that was the review of Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti. So have had some brief conversations, but acknowledge that a separate kōrero does need to be had between Ngāti Toa and Ngā Hapu o Ōtaki, and hopefully we can have that kōrero with Aotearoa as well, around the future role and function of Te Whakaminenga, and what that might look like for mātāwaka in our rohe, and what that means also in terms of setting up the work program for Te Whakaminenga into the future, because our work program, as I understand it, has been largely the same and hasn't changed too much over the years. So I guess it's also an opportunity for us to think about how we might want to switch that up, and that, I think the timing might work quite well with the new council coming on board as well. Yeah. Any comments on that?
I think it's absolutely fantastic.
Kia ora, thank you.
I think I'm going to agree with Councillor Halliday for once. Thank you very much.
I have a comment. There was a karaki made up for the council a couple of years ago, and we haven't used it yet. I think it should be brought into updating our Whakaminenga, and possibly singing a himene after karaki. I think that'll be great to lift our spirits through our meeting. There's only two things that I think that maybe we can add. Kahu?
Oh, kia ora mātua, I appreciate that. I love singing, and I am tone deaf, cannot sing, but I just love it.
We can all sing. We can all sing.
Yeah. Councillor?
Yeah, like through you, Madam Chair, I just wanted to acknowledge your mention of Mātuaka with regards to the Tiwak conversation. I don't know how that fits in, how that looks or anything like that, but the fact that that's part of the conversation, I think is fantastic. Thank you.
Kia ora. Any other matters on that? Ka pai. So we can move through our agenda then. Item 8, iwi updates. Any updates from Ngā Hapu? That is the question on all of our minds. I'd really like them to be at this table, but I guess that's up to them.
Oh, kia ora Naomi, tātou. Updates, we've had so much going on. We've been, as you know, quite involved with council on the intensification work and sent a letter to the ministers and some of the ministers and haven't heard back. We're now talking directly with our whakamātauranga or our education organisations in Otaki about and making sure they're as informed as possible and to give them an opportunity to think about how it impacts on them, but also in our township, and also with the community board and thinking about and we're having another open session because it's come to our attention that there's still a lot of people that don't know a lot about it, even though we had online open workshops for hapu, and the council of course did a lot of advertising about it. So it's an ongoing conversation, and we'll see where we land with that, and we appreciate the council's involvement and talking with us and sharing all the information and us moving along together on that. We had quite a bit of discussion about it at the recent council meeting, and you'll be aware that we have some concerns about the sort of how the legislation is contravening the policies and objectives behind it, and how some of the treaty rights are being sort of overridden in the way that it's happening. So that is one of the sort of major points of our response to the ministers. But there's a whole lot of things alongside it, and it's a little bit complex and is seeking to bring some solutions. So it's an ongoing conversation, and we will keep you updated about the progress of it, especially if we get any responses from those ministers or the local MP. We've got quite a lot happening in the Taiao space at the moment. Oh, good timing, Denise. We've got a lot happening in the Taiao space at the moment. There's a lot going on with GWRC, and you know, it's like a 2-3 year program of work with the Whaitua and the regional policy statement, and we're really pleased to have a number of people in there, and we're currently talking about managing all that mahi and the wāhi tapu mahi with KCDC and a range of other things. But it's exciting to have some really well qualified people with a love for that work and a love for working with their hapu and iwi. The housing is another major area for us, and then so we have a few different things happening in that discussion as well. Those are the main things. Denise might like to. Denise, we're just up to iwi updates. So I'll talk briefly about the intensification and what's happening, and then about Taiao and housing. It's probably an opportune time for you to jump in if you wanted to share anything at this point about what's happening.
Kia ora tātou, tēnā koe Kirsten. Kia ora koutou te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti. Nā koe Naomi. Koutou ko guru, koutou ngā memo te kaunihira. Ngā kai mahi, Janice, kai koutou katoa, tēnā koutou. No, I've been just sitting here listening, Kirsten, so I've picked up on most of the discussion that's occurred. Don't have a lot to add. I think Kirsten's covered most of it. Probably something we might want to share with you. Just the pending devolvement of health services to iwi authorities is something that's on the agenda right now. And just we Otaki and Hapu Otaki sits between two district health boards, Mid-Central and Hutt Valley Health Board. And the fact that we need to, like housing, we need to be working and consulting with our people in Otaki, our community and our Hapu members about where their preferred option is, because as we know, we have a lot who prefer to go down to our whanaunga at Takutai to Hora Te Pai. Our Otaki Medical Centre is taxed at the best of times just to cope with the population in Otaki and the demands for medical services and treatment. So yeah, that's quite a big one at the moment. So that's, you know, while everything else is devolving, that's another one that's devolving on the sideline, and it's moving at a far more rapid pace in the last couple of months. So that's an important one. We're working on that with our local medical centre, and we need to be, like we are with our housing, we need to be doing a lot more consultation with our people in community in Otaki about their preferences. Some will have a preference to stay with the South and go with Capital Health. Others will have a preference to stay with what they know and stay with Holowhenua. So as an iwi, our iwi raupa ki te tonga, have a preference to stay within the Holowhenua medical establishment that will be established in Holowhenua, which essentially will pick up all of local ki te tonga, including Ngā Hapu Otaki. So yeah, there are some changes for us in that regard. So long as the councils don't change and Kāpiti picks up Holowhenua or Holowhenua think they can pick up Otaki. So long as that our aukati doesn't change kahu going forward. We've got no desire to be with Holowhenua District Council. But probably that's probably it. Kirsten's touched on most of the things that we're working through. Working hard to to increase our team members. Working towards an AGM at the end of this month, and hopefully they'll bring some new people on board and some possible changes. So we look forward to that and what that might be. So tēnā koutou. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Denise. I think just one other thing to add is that since our last meeting, we were hoping that Pika Pika to Otaki Expressway would be opening later this year, and we've now been informed that they're still hoping it would be towards the end of this year, but are signalling that it's likely to be early next year. There's some pressures in getting materials, we're told, and I'm sure some of you are already aware of this, but we don't have a date. We'll let you know when we do, and we look forward to all being involved in the opening together. Pika Pika to Otaki Expressway. Yeah, as in, I think last time we met, we were thinking it might be opening in October. We're now told it's likely to be later in the year or possibly even early next year. So we don't have a date for the opening.
Kia ora, Kirsten. Kia ora, Whaia Denise. Thank you for your update on things happening for Ngā Hapu o Otaki. For Ngāti Tō, I guess our update's really just in terms of the mahi that we've been doing with council. I think a lot of that has been focused on that planning space, so district plan, Papakainga chapters, working with Ngā Hapu on that, and then kind of similar to the things that Kirsten was raising, how that intersect between the work that GW's doing around kind of the regional policy statement, regional coastal policy statement, how those things all interact, because I think that this whaitua process that's looking to come up out of GW will include KCDC as well, per all of the other whaitua processes that are that have been run to date. So Ngāti Tō's been involved in two already, for Porirua and for Wellington and the Hutt Valley. And often what we've seen in those processes is, you know, you have lots of conversations about stormwater, wastewater, drinking water, and so on top of all of that, with these three waters reforms going on, there's all these moving parts that you have to kind of keep your head across. Yeah, I guess the other big one for Ngāti Tō, which people might be interested in, I'm not sure, and that doesn't really affect the Kapiti Coast too much, but we just beginning of last month, closed a deal with the Ministry of Education where we purchased 40 schools across the Greater Wellington area, where we own the land which the schools are on, and schools just continue to be schools as they are. But that's been a big thing for us, and it's taken a lot of work by a lot of people. Actually, a lot of work by not so many people, but it has meant that there is kind of a lot of flow-on effects around the mahi that is required of us, and yeah, I guess just raising that as a matter of interest, because we have had lots of reach outs and questions and inquiries because of the media attention that we've received. I guess the other big one for us is just because we are in that kind of post-settlement phase, really looking to I guess implement a lot of the provisions within our treaty settlement, and one of the big ones for us is obviously around Kapiti Island. So what that looks like for the region, which is why we're quite involved in the Te Urihi development down at the McLean's Park, or Te Urihi, formerly known as McLean's Park. No, and you know what that means in terms of it's the biosecurity centre and the development of a what's it's not quite a museum. It's not a destination centre. There's a particular term that they're using to describe that space, but I don't know. But I've seen the concept plans and it looks cool. Yeah, it's like except I keep getting that it's not an information centre. Yeah, more than an information centre. Yeah, because that's really focused on connection to the island. But there's also, it's quite interesting that there's that project. There's so many different elements to it because it's about building a building, but of course that building's right next to a stream. That requires some work to be done, and there's a whole community consultation piece around that too. So that's kind of that's all from me on that point. I guess the only other thing for next weekend, Ko, you might have to speak to this, is that it's our first Matariki holiday next week, public holiday, and so for Ngāti Tō. That means we've got a whole week of early mornings basically, but there's lots happening across the region to celebrate, commemorate Matariki. With the big one happening at Te Papa on the Friday. Did you? Well. Right.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So just to sort of go touch on that, the Maramataka launch is on the 27th for council, June the 22nd, starting at 10 a.m. We're fortunate enough to have the mihi whakatau in the kōtare room at Te Ramaroa. Of course, mayors and councillors have been being informed that iwi invitations are on the way. Like Naomi says, it's the first, I suppose where it's been taken seriously in terms of a cultural ceremony. I think it's the first public holiday we've had in 100 years. Internationally, it's going to get hooked up right around not the launch at Te Ramaroa, but the national launch at Te Papa. Although I still think that the launch at Te Ramaroa should also be televised internationally, because I think it's exciting for Kāpiti Coast to get involved with the uplift with Matariki. So that's happening next on the 27th, but of course the 24th is the launch, the national launch. It's set off a whole lot of discussions, because with that stuff comes funding, and so that's some interesting. You'll have some interesting discussions over the next few years as council about the focusing on that, and of course iwi are also trying to have some understandings how they can do that as individual iwi, or whether there's an art thing to it as well, or so those are just some of the machinations that they'll have to work out. So just a FYI with the Maramataka launch, and that focus of the Maramataka, that's the Māori calendar, is on Rongoa, and it looks beautiful, I've got to say. With a whole lot of focus on the Māori lunar calendar, as opposed to the Gregorian. That's the name they use for the normal calendar, Gregorian calendar. Sounds like an old word. Yes, Gregory. Could I just have one more thing to up? And apologies about bringing up the Marae grant, because I just realised I was reading the wrong email. But there's iwi capacity agreements are about to be sent through this afternoon to both Ngā Hapu, Ōtaki and Ngāti Toa, and we're still working on the agreement with Te Atiawa. So very excited about that, and just wanted to inform everybody that the Marae grants for Katiuku has been approved. Ka pai? And you've already spoken on the TWOC annual work program. Obviously that will follow once we have a look at the function of TWOC as a whole, and of course Mātāwaka, and then look at the work program. So that's all I've got with my updates. Tēnā tātou.
Kia ora, thank you, Ko. Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thanks for that, Kahu. I just wanted, if you could just give me a bit of clarity, the capacity agreements, what was that about? Is that in relation to what came through Council last week as such, or is that something else?
No, those are the annual capacity agreements, and this time around there is a significant increase in the budget that the Council agreed through the long-term plan. So we have agreed the approach with 2 of the 3 iwi for this year that really sets the scene for next year. So we'll be agreeing next year's agreements at the start of the financial year rather than the end of the financial year, which is a vast improvement on how it's been for the last few years. So I, for one, am quite excited about that. And we're having ongoing conversations with Aotearoa to get their agreement in place too.
That's lovely. Thank you very much.
Raised in terms of capacity and stuff, so great.
Kapai, thank you. So our next agenda item is treaty settlement overview from each iwi. So I've given a bit of an update from a Ngāti Tō perspective. I'm not sure if there's anything that Ngā Hapu has to add around that.
It's pretty much the same as last time. We're partway through the hearings process, and we have a couple scheduled for the Otaki area later in this year and then some early next year. So it's just in progress, lots and lots of mahi. I'm not too involved in it at the moment.
Kia ora, thank you. So our next agenda item here is council update, but I note that there's nil update other than Mr. Mayor's got something to add.
On the council update, last Tuesday we made a significant appointment around the governance table, but let me push it back and frame it. Representation around the governance board, around the council table, was actually started back in Jenny Rowan's time. But the appointments to the committees, standing committees in council, was made through Te Whakaminenga, one representative. What has changed, of course, is that this time round we've got one representative each from the 3 iwi mana whenua partners to the Strategy and Operations Committee, the Appeals Hearing Committee, and the Grants Allocation Subcommittee with full voting rights. So there's an increase in numbers, and there's a direct relationship between the representatives and the 3 mana whenua. That's a change. Also, we'll continue to have representation, again, 3 representatives to the council with no voting rights, but full participation. You've got access to all the documents and council papers. Like the community boards, you have speaking rights and the ability to influence decisions and argue your case, but you don't have voting rights. There will also be an appointment to the Audit and Risk Committee, but there will be one. This from all 3, there's got to be one, not one each, but one. They'll go through a process to define how and what skill set you need to bring to that table. So it's been a good move, and it's tautoku, the tree shaking, if you like, that was done by Te Aotearoa, who were not happy with the current state of relationship. They did a review paper, which has taken a long time to land, but slow and steady, but it has landed with significant changes. And I think the changes will continue. I must make a very strong point that councils as such are slow machines. It's the huge range of national legislation which is pushing this area right across the country. Luckily for us, we've got a memorandum of understanding with the local EV that's worth about 25 years old, so that is held in good state. Long may it continue and continue to evolve. Thank you.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Mayor, thank you for that. And I guess on behalf of Te Whakaminenga, thanks the council for making the significant step that it did last week in providing for iwi representation and participation around the council table. I think it makes well, to me anyways, it's a reflection of our partnership and journey of where we've got into over the years. So, kia ora. If there's no comments on that, further council updates. Next item on our agenda is correspondence. There is no.
I go back to the May the 3rd meeting, and the minutes are on your papers. I tabled a letter from Chris Webber on the formation of the Paraparaumu Maori committee. They were supposed to have an AGM and stuff, expressing certain issues of concern to them. I copied the letter to the three mana whenua, seeking their advice. I was very careful in concluding the letter to them, and I will read the particular paragraph. In responding to this request for guidance and advice, my council would appreciate that any such response from your good self includes mana whenua understanding of my council's statutory obligations and requirements under the Local Government Act 2002. The reason why I was careful to introduce that is because council, I don't want my council to be stuck in between some processes that need to happen. I have also, on the same date of Tuesday, 12th April, sent a response to Chris Webber, thanking him for his email, acknowledging its importance, and hoping to respond to the contents as soon as I can. As yet, I have not received any response from the three mana whenua. I'm not in a hurry if they're not in a hurry, but I just want to keep this issue alive so that the position of council in this matter is adequately protected in terms of the processes that I need to take. Thank you.
Kirsten.
Is that? Oh, yeah. Oh, kia ora. I can tell you, thank you for sharing the information with us and the direct emails. We have it still on our table. We're still discussing it. It's a bit of a funny one. It is something that we all need to work out about how we relate with Mātai Waka, and yes, the statutory obligations. And we do intend to respond to you, Mr. Mayor, and work out, what's going on with a person who I understand is from mana whenua, but is operating separately to mana whenua in this area, seeking to do something, and how that relates to our position and the way that our relationship and partnership works. So we're thinking about a way to have those relationships with Mātai Waka and for them to be able to form relationships with mana whenua, tangata whenua, in order to be engaging in different forums. But it is quite a complex issue, so we are working on that, and we'll be back in touch with you and talking with our other mana whenua in the area.
Kia ora, thank you. Yes. we will respond. Ngāti Tō will respond as well, but as Chris said, it's a complex issue for iwi. Not the response to use, not the complex part. It's what the implications of that means from a in a Te Māori space. So those are the things that will need to be worked through. And of course, we will be picking up the conversation about or the kōrero about mātāwaka representation as part of the review of Te Whakaminenga. Ka pai. Okay, so I guess we can move to our next agenda item, which is future agenda requests. Any future requests?
Where our kohanga is situated in Raumati South, there's those big trees there, and it's our kohanga sits more or less underneath those trees, and it's so dangerous that about 3 years ago I said to Mark that there was one big one there that had a branch hanging out over the play area, and it was lucky it was Christmas time, and the branch broke and it fell into that the play area, not in our play area, in the council play area, but there's branches down there and those big willow poplar trees that are blue gum trees that are sitting right above our kids' playground. I'm just wondering what help we can to get to either to lower them a bit, because it's actually dangerous for our tamariki.
Maybe lower
Eh? Oh no, even the branches that are up higher, you know, they came down there about 2 years ago and they took a couple of branches out, but there's still branches there. If you go down there and have a look, you can see how dangerous over this last week, and to see those branches, and it was just. Well, that's what we were told. Jim, we were told by the people down there, no, they've been there longer than the kohanga, and they should stay there. Yeah. And I think the kids are the indigenous people, not the trees. So, kia ora, I just only asking that if that could be fitted on, how can we get help for that?
How about I connect you with the parks team that are responsible for looking after those trees, and we can take that conversation offline. Yeah.
Kia ora. Well, that brings us to the end of, one more agenda item, but there's nil there around confirmation of public excluded minutes. We didn't have any last time, so now that brings us to the end of our agenda for the day. So I guess I'll just say thank you all for being here today. It's been a good hui with lots of good discussion. Thank you, Matua Jim, for attending today. Kia ora. Yeah. See you. Ka pai. Oh, and lunch out the back after this. Matua Jim. Korodon. See you.
Kia ora tātou. Kia ora Naomi. Koe te whakahaere I tēnei o tātou hui, ngā mihi atu kia koe. Tōna kia tātou katoa. Kia huri kia koe Jim. He waimaria ke mātou, e te noho mai e tō taha. Nā te mea hoki ko koe rā I rungo I te waka eke I ngā rā o mua. Ko koe rā te tohunga e tū I te kei o te waka. Mo te ropu nahinarang. I'm just saying that we're glad to be sitting amongst you with you, Jim, and just to know that we're not that far behind you in way of speaking, but no reira ngā mihi, Jim, kia tātou katoa. He tika ana rā te kōrero, me mana o tiara a Matariki, me whakanui a Matariki. We say welcome Matariki in, and then we can celebrate it. And we also have the same Matariki Ahuna Nui, where we all gather together as whānau, and Matariki tā Puapua, which there's a lot of water lying around, which we don't want at the moment. But it also talks about the pools of water, but the pools of love, and the pools of sharing of food at this time of Matariki. So I've got one at my house on next Thursday night. I've got people coming. We're going to have a big fire. I hope we don't set the place on fire. but we're gathering together to just to sit together, tell stories, and at the end to sing, and that. So I hope we all do the same. No reira, kia ora tātou, let us pray. Tukuna kia topa, kia tio, kia tau. Whakanuia ko te hau, whakanuia ko te wai, whakanuia ko te hā, whakanuia ko te kaupapa, whakanuia ko te, ko te rā. Tākiri mai ko te ata, tākiri mai ko te rā, tākiri mai ko te uira, tākiri mai ko te mahana. E ko te rā e kori ake nei, e ko te kaupapa e kori ake nei, e ko tātou katoa e kori ake nei. Tūturu whakamaua kia tīna, haumi e hui e tāiki. Kia ora tātou. That's right, John.